Hello, good afternoon. My name is Chris Blundell. I'm a partner at Brunswick, where I run our global technology and telecoms team, and I'm delighted to welcome you to what will hopefully be a brilliant panel this afternoon, talking about the fascinating topic of smart materials and the materials of the future and how they are driving innovation. So a first natural question, I suppose, is why are we talking about smart materials? This is a big digital conference, but I think it's important to remember that everything digital and everything we see around us here is built on the innovations, the physical innovations underneath. All the devices and the networks that we see throughout this conference are all built on advances in semiconducting materials, substrate sensors, silicon photonics, engineered metals, folding glass. It's a very long list, and these are the things that provide the platform for digital invention. And it's not just that the digital economy relies on these physical developments, but it's actually the relationship between the digital and the physical that's so important and that really drives discovery. I think the rate of progress that we're seeing today in materials science is actually accelerating because of digital innovation, because of things like the power of AI. I thought it was very interesting yesterday to see Demis Hassabis, the CEO of Google DeepMind, in his keynote saying the thing he was most excited about, one of the things he was most excited about with AI was its power to deliver smart materials and potential room temperature superconductors. So there's actually a virtuous circle with this industry at the center. And it's actually driving innovation across every industry. And that means that the canvas to apply these things is beginning to expand exponentially. So one of the most important materials in that group is graphene, and that's something that we're going to talk a lot about today because it can do so much. But there's also a mind-boggling range of materials. We have biocompatible polymers for drug discovery, medical devices, tissue engineering for replacement body parts, everything that's biodegradable and recyclable, which is going to transform the way that we make just about everything in the future. And all of these things can be integrated with digital technology to multiply their impact and their uses. So there's huge progress and there's huge opportunity. But there's also a lot of challenges. And these are challenges that are actually quite common across frontier technology. So firstly, there are genuine scientific, technical obstacles to overcome. We actually need great minds, some of whom I'm glad to say are joining us today, but making a deep commitment and taking part in global collaboration to make these things work. And in a world that agrees less and less, I think that scientific commitment to truth and openness and working together across disciplines and across nationalities is going to be critical. Secondly, it takes a long time and it's very expensive. The journey of graphene it's been 20 years now since its first isolation. And after 5 years, it was still the most expensive substance in the world, and it took 13 years for the first commercial product to be shipped. So throughout a process like that, you've got to keep persuading people of the vision. You've got to keep them bought in. They mustn't give up for the inevitable setbacks. But they've also got to provide the funding. You know, someone's got to take the risk to move what's possible into what's realistic and what actually makes it to market. And thirdly, as we see with AI a little bit today, you know, we need rules and guidelines, and no one knows what they are right now. We need to work out what's okay, and that needs to be engaged, needs to be debated, needs to be compromised, and all of that is, again, across very complex international systems. And then lastly, we've got to persuade people that we're creating a world that they want to live in. That means engaging with civil society. It means tackling ethical problems head on. It means engaging with the downsides. Don't forget that one of the greatest advances in materials science was plastic. It's strong, it's cheap, it's sterile, revolutionized food, medicine, health, and depending how you look at it, has also caused an unfolding ecological disaster. And we see that play out now in things like artificial and augmented virtual reality, where that argument about whether you want to live in a virtual world is only get sharper when we're talking about advances that, you know, in human embedded technologies, for example, that really start to question what it means to be a human being. So what that means is that everyone here has a role, whether you're in the sharp end of research, R&D, product engineering, Or maybe you're in IR raising money to fund the projects, or you're in government relations shaping regulation, or consumer marketing persuading people to have it in their lives. Everyone here is vital to that. So there's a great deal to talk about. I'm just a warm-up act to set the scene for 4 fantastic panelists. We can't cover everything in the hour that we've got, but I'm glad to say that we've got 4 experts with very different insights, very different ways to think about the conceptual, about the scientific, and about the practical elements of innovating with these new materials. And so with that, I'm delighted to welcome our first guest, Dr. Zina Cinker, who is the chief creator at Puzzle X. And she's going to talk to us about how to think about all of this.
Hello, everyone. Today, I'm going to tell you the story of matter. I'm going to tell you the story of the atoms and molecules of our world, or as we call it, the metaverse. Look around you. Everything you touch and you feel is made of matter. Everything, my hand, the phone you're holding, the coffee you're drinking, everything is made of the building blocks of matter. If you do an exercise for me right now, if you closed your eyes and you envision everything around us suddenly crumbling into little pieces, the most elemental and transformative pieces that they have, what's going to be on the floor is going to be about 100 or so of these building blocks. That is it. 100 or so of the Lego pieces that build everything. From the squishy thing inside my skull, which is making me think and talk with you, to the data centers that we have, to the mountains and to the clouds, everything is made of different iteration and compositions of the same Lego pieces or materials. And as humanity has mastered the art of a certain class of materials, there's always been a leap in human civilization. From the Stone Age, when we were hominins on the brink of extinction, without fangs, without claws, and we saw this lump of matter, lump of stone, and we learned how to make an object with it. That object, that spear, was more than a tool. It was the beginning of us becoming very efficient hunters and carnivores. The brains we have right now is the result of our carnivorous diet and the proteins we had. That tool was more than a tool. It was the beginning of some different path for humanity and for hominids. And the same thing with the Bronze Age and Iron Age, where we mastered the art of metallurgy and being able to build tools, which resulted in what? The modern agriculture. And the cities we have right now, the settlements that we have right now, are the result of us mastering modern agriculture. Or the age of aluminum, where we created space travel and air travel, and the global commerce we have right now is the result of our mastery over aluminum. And the age of silicon. The single material that is responsible for the entirety of our digital modern era. So the question is, what are the next materials? What is that next material that is going to be the beginning of a new era and a new age? And I'm here to tell you that perhaps there is not going to be an age of a single material. That perhaps, maybe, we are getting to a point where we can become masters of matter and control over building materials, simulating, and being able to constructing them. And that is because we're about to enter the age of exponential technologies. We are at a very pivotal point in the history of humanity, where certain areas of key technological development, specifically 4 areas: genomics, frontier materials and nanoassembly, quantum, and AI and machine learning, are finally getting to a point of maturity where they're not only accelerating one another, but they're actually feeding into one another and creating hybrid areas of development. And if you think about it, what happens if we can simulate? What happens if we can simulate those Lego pieces coming together? And if we have the prowess of being able to put those materials together in a nanoscale, perhaps we would have much better mastery over materials and creating what we want, as opposed to trial and error of creating solid-state batteries, pharmaceuticals, throwing stuff at petri dishes to see what happens, and creating pharmaceuticals and drugs that way. So in the next 5 minutes, I am going to tell you about some of those areas of development in what we call the metaverse, or the world of atoms and molecules, that I personally find interesting, and Puzzle X, we cover them extensively. And today we have the pleasure and honor of having Sir Kostya Novoselov, the Nobel laureate in graphene, who is going to be talking about, hopefully, graphene. And that is actually, Kostya, you're the reason why I went to graphene, and I did my PhD in graphene and 2D materials. And these materials are truly fascinating materials at the atomic level of thinness with extraordinary photonic, mechanical, and optical properties that we have never seen before. Materials that are going to be giving birth to the work of, for example, some of our collaborators from graphene transparent tattoos with Deji Akinwande from UT Austin, where you can move a drone simply with the movement of your eyes, or with the work of ICN2 and in-brains electronics, where we have graphene brain interfaces, or the work of James Storr from Rice University, where with a few drops of graphene nanoplatelets and creating those interconnections between the neural pathways and assisting them that way to connect and find one another, we can have a mouse with a severed spine walk again in 2 weeks. And the development of many other sensor and technologies, such as the Wi-Fi, the work from MIT, the Wi-Fi seeing through concrete, or truly getting to the point where we can make many surfaces sentient and conductive, where spinach can send an email, or we can resurrect the cells of an extinct woolly mammoth to make meatball with it, with a very interesting work of Wow. And one of the most interesting areas of development for me personally is a very interesting development in the sphere of exotic and biocomputation. Specifically with the work of Andrew Adamatsky from University of West England, where you have the mycelium, the network of the mushrooms being able to be used as a computational power. And then to the work that we covered at Puzzle X last year, where what we did was that we captured the brain waves of many of our speakers at our event, and we stored that information of the brain waves not inside a hard drive, not in a data center, but we stored them inside a strand of a DNA. Right now, there exists a strand of DNA that contains the information and the brain waves of our speakers at Puzzle X. And finally, to one of the works that we covered about 2 years ago, the first demonstration of synthetic biointelligence, where we connected from Barcelona on the stage to Australia to activate a bunch of brain cells sitting in a petri dish to learn live how to play a game of Pong with us. These are technologies and just the beginning. And all of these technologies are enabled by our mastery over materials. And with that, I would like to conclude, but I would like to leave you with this one thing. At the age of exponential technologies, the speed of development is dizzyingly fast. The traditional linear predictive models for where different fields are going, from energy to communication to materials, they cannot be predicted. And that's the reason why these days we work with decision makers to talk about foresight, especially as those who are in business, who are in decision-making powers in governments. We need to look at the different pieces of the future collectively together to understand what is the bigger picture. And that also brings me down to saying thank you for GSMA for facilitating this conversation here for all of us, and thank you to you, kudos to you for coming together to look at the piece of the future, especially in the world of materials. And I hope that collectively we can join forces to build a better future. Thank you.
Zina, brilliant. Thank you very much. You give us a huge array of things to think about there. If I can have just one question to detain you a moment longer. What out of all of those things are you most excited about?
I don't understand biology, and I'm fascinated by biology these days. I am seeing a lot more development in the interfaces of bio and silicon happening that really excites me, especially in the world of biocomputation and exotic computing, that I suggest that you keep an eye on, because that's the place that I think that we're going to see enormous transformation in the next 10 years or so. For example, the example that I was giving about the DNA information storage. DNA information storage, for those of you who know, been around for 10, 15 years. There's absolutely nothing new about DNA information storage. What is new these days is using DNA for biocomputation. And that's a space to keep track of. That's the space that excites me most.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Well, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, everyone.
Right. Well, as mentioned earlier, if we're talking about materials, we have to talk about graphene. And if you're talking about graphene, it really helps if one of your guests is one of the first people, well, he was part of the two-man team who isolated, I used the word discovered, he said he isolated it in the first place 20 years ago, for which he won the Nobel Prize in Physics. So to share some of the latest developments in one of the most exciting materials in history, please welcome to the stage Professor Sir Konstantin Novoselov.
Can you hear me? So it's really a great pleasure to be here. Always very challenging to talk after Zina, and how can you say no to a lady like this? So yes, 1.5 minutes about graphene, okay? But then it's going to be something about completely different, right? Okay, so graphene, we all know graphene, the thinnest possible material, first 2D material, very, very simple, probably the simplest material possible, and yet it has all those superlatives being flexible, conductive, transparent, strong, thermally conductive, and so on, which gave rise to a number of quite exciting applications, from electronics to sensors, composite materials, energy, and so on. And of course, but what is probably more important, so some of you know that we started this journey into graphene by using the Scotch tape to exfoliate graphite, and to our shame, we still use exactly the same methods up to now. It's much, much faster than anything else. Highest quality of the crystals you can get. But then, well, now quite a lot of money are thrown into graphene, so we can afford to buy not only the lead pencils, but also some other pencils as well. And apparently, it actually gave rise to a whole new field called the two-dimensional material. So graphene is not alone. There are many, many other 2D materials, and they really cover a huge range of properties, from semiconducting, insulating, conductors, ferromagnets, ferroelectrics, superconductors, you name it. So they're all there. And that's really give us a very, very nice, interesting opportunity, because now if we have access to those two-dimensional layers, one atom thick layers, what we can do in our lab, we can take them and then one by one and then stack them into something, into a new material, three-dimensional crystal, but the crystals which don't naturally exist in nature, but we can create them artificially in the lab. And that's basically, if you wish, that's the state of the art of the material science these days, that we can create materials with the predetermined properties on demand with the atomic precision. And that's what we do in the lab, and we can program certain properties into this stack. And it's really, we have quite a number of tools how to do it, how many layers, which layers, how to rotate those layers, and so on. So this is so as Zina already mentioned, we don't need to stick with one material only, Stone Age, Bronze Age, Iron Age. We don't need to stick with the Silicon Age. We can create materials on demand tailored materials. And that's the current reality. What I wanted to talk to you about is actually what's the future of materials. So in the universities, we need to think a little bit further away, say 10, 20, 30 years. So what kind of materials do you want to have in 30 years? Rather than asking everyone of you what do you want to see, let me show you an example of how other people answered to this question. So I hope I'm not the only old person in the audience. Some of you do remember this movie. So for those who don't, it's Terminator 2, and so it was made in 1991. And the plot of the movie, for those who didn't watch it, it's the robot from 2029 sent back to 1991 to kill Sarah Connor and her son. And the only reason I'm telling it to you is to show how people in 91 thought our materials in the future will be. So it will be flexible, change in shape, adapt in color, safe, self-healing, and so on and so on and so on. Right? So now we are in 2024. We do have still 5 years to go, but unfortunately, here is the problem, that unless we do something radically different, we have absolutely zero chance to fulfill the dreams of the Terminator 2 movie and produce those fascinating materials. And that's the reason, and the reason for that is not about robotics. The reason is that fundamentally our technology has this top-down functionality, that the functionality only appears on the system level when you assemble everything up to the last screw. Individual cogwheels, they're not functional at all. And the same about transistors, the same about other technologies as well. But if you think about biological system. So I'm also, same as Zina, I'm really fascinated how it works. There, the functionality is spread across all the possible levels. Individual proteins, you take them out, they're still functional. The cellular membranes, the cells, the organs, they are still functional on their own rights, and you don't need to think, okay, that protein needs to unfold, catalyze some reaction, fold back. It is done by itself. And that's exactly what we want to do with the material world. We want to create the so-called functional intelligent materials and bring certain functionality from the system level down to the material level. Just let me give you one example what I mean by this. So imagine, quite one of the biggest applications for graphene are the membranes, and for example, desalination membranes. In some countries, like in Singapore, there are most of our water is coming through the membrane. Not graphene, but graphene membranes are being used in some applications as well already. And it works well, but it doesn't matter which membrane do you use. You still have to put some sensor downstream. The sensor sends the signal to computer that analyzes for the presence of some toxic species and then opens or closes the valve. But imagine if the membrane itself has the capacity to analyze the water stream and then change its conformation to adapt and to change the water flow. So here you would have the membrane itself, the material itself, works as the sensor, as the computer, as the actuator at the same time. So we basically want to delegate some of the functionality down on the material level. So I should say that it's not easy. I'm not going to go into details how we think it should work. We have some interesting mathematics how it should work, but apparently when we developed this idea, it turned out that it would work exactly how the proteins in your body work, where you have multiple metastable states, and then each state would have different functionality, and then if you can navigate those proteins between those states, you can gain different functionality out of that. So we want to create materials which would have the same glassy metastable states and then being able to extract some useful functionality from them. So I should say that unfortunately, I'm a physicist, but physics doesn't really help much here because out of equilibrium systems, metastable systems are extremely difficult to model. So what we're trying to do is to use the machine learning, dynamic machine learning, to learn about the behavior of those materials and then design the new one. Of course, for that you need quite a lot of data. So materials robotics should we work a lot on those as well. When you say material robotics, usually people think about something like this. It's just work from our collaborators who simply film our student and just created a robot. Doesn't really work in the lab. So most of our robots are really strongly dedicated, and they just do one type of material at a time, but many times, collecting thousands of data points to train our AI systems. And just let me give you a few examples of those materials, those out of equilibrium materials, alive materials, what they can do. So this is the high entropy alloys. So what you see is basically a microscopy image. Those tiny little dots are individual atoms, and then you drill a hole through. And if you design this material right, in the right way, there is enough energy stored in the material, in this energy is directed in such a way that it can self-heal this hole and then just create you new perfectly crystalline material. Works much better, much faster on the simulation, but it does work in the real life as well. So then there are active materials for drug delivery, so which can store these active biological molecules and bring them through the high acidity of your stomach into the intestine and release it there. I cannot show you a video out of this like this. Those are tiny, but in fact you can design many materials, actually macroscopic materials, which have the same functionality, this mechanical functionality as well. So last example I wanted to show you, I'm not even sure if you can quantify it as materials at all, but I really like this work. So there are those bacteria which can produce electron during their life cycle, and then if you can collect it, you can actually use it, send it into the external circuit. So you basically give them sugar or lactose, and they give you electric current back. So it's the biological fuel cell. But what is really exciting that we use both graphene but also conductive polymer to produce the collective electrode, because the electrode is really important. Otherwise, you can't. So you need to wire every single bacteria. But those bacteria help to polymerize this conductive polymer, and the more polymer is there, the more bacteria start to grow and divide and multiply. And this looks like an active material which grows by itself and develops by itself. So I think I will stop here. Just wanted to say that to conclude that indeed we do have the ways how to produce new materials on demand already, but I think future would be when we can delegate some of the functionality to our materials. That would change the world entirely. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Krishnan, thank you very much. Completely fascinating from start to finish. I'd love to ask you a couple of quick questions, which is, firstly, for someone who has been at the frontier of this sort of science for a long time, we'd love to hear your perspective on that journey, overcoming challenges. What sort of advice would you give to people in the field of materials science now that would help them be successful?
Well, I think the one lesson which I learned is that we still don't know much more than we do now, and the example of, and the more we learn, actually the frontier of the knowledge which we don't know and when we don't understand grows. So the importance of the fundamental research is there, and it would be really nice to get more attention to it.
Yeah, the more you find out that you don't know is the problem with your life work.
Right.
Yeah. And of all the things you've talked about there, if I can ask the same question which I asked to Zina, if you had to pick an application that you're maybe the most excited about, or you think people here might be dealing with the most, could you pick one?
I think we're really living in the world where We have so many fascinating technologies now. Maybe I'll tell you something about what I haven't mentioned. So graphene been in the agenda, on the agenda for 20 years. I'm so tired of it. So I switched completely to the functional intelligent material. Not much graphene, and still I have to come back to it because it's becoming so important for the sustainability issues. For example, so this story about the green concrete, when you add graphene into it, which you can actually get from CO2, and then you put inside of your concrete to make it stronger, and actually which helps to release even less CO2. Really fascinates me a lot. It's a fantastic combination of very high-level science, sustainability, technology.
Well, you've certainly, I think you've opened all of our minds to a whole world of possibilities. So please join me in saying thank you very much indeed, Professor Kostya. Brilliant. So next up, it is my pleasure to introduce Rika Nakazawa. She is the Group Vice President of New Ventures and Innovation and the Head of Sustainability at NTT Data. And she is going to talk about something profoundly important, which is where AI and sustainability converge with networks. So welcome to the stage, Rika.
I know. I have to follow a doctor and a professor. Your expectations are extremely high. So let me try to impress you with something from Wikipedia. What is a photon? A photon is an elementary particle that is a quantum of the electromagnetic field, including electromagnetic radiation such as light, and the force carrier for the electromagnetic force. I just feel smart just saying that. So you're welcome. Thank you. Photons are massless, so they always move at the speed of light. And perhaps that's why our motto this year at NTT Data on our booth is bringing you the future faster. So yes, I did take some liberties when I was asked to talk about material science to say, well, I'm going to talk about particles. I'm going to talk about subatomic particles, as you just heard, materials of the future. And specifically, I'm going to address an area around silicon photonics and sustainable networks. Now, silicon photonics is not new, neither is photonics in the networking field, but I hope that after today, you'll see how much energy and attention is being paid in this area, literally paid, billions of dollars, if not eventually trillions of dollars going into the space. Because where we are going is the future faster. We are starting to move at the speed of photons in terms of the need for processing. What was once upon a time okay in terms of how quickly humans can react and how we move from analog to digital, what's been going on in the world around us in nature is being able to move in ways that we don't simply understand even to today. And as we move into the future around beyond human, and perhaps even superhuman eventually, especially as we bring graphene and other materials into how we hopefully can get a little bit further than those robots that you saw stumbling on the field, we need to be able to harness some new ways to be able to drive the future, because AI is creating a lot of challenges as we move from the high capacity storage up through to autonomous driving traffic. The need to be able to compute with lower latency, higher throughput is just starting to get urgent, critical, and almost unmanageable. At NTT, we are one of the largest suppliers of data center services. So this is an area that we're very, very proud to be able to focus on, to be able to deliver the storage, compute powers, and communication powers that companies, countries, as well as industries and hyperscalers need. But look at this relentless growth that we are anticipating from the data volume to the power consumption that is going to require. And so it is often an oxymoron to say sustainable AI, especially as We anticipate GPUs. We all saw what NVIDIA did, what ARM has gone. By the way, I am a NVIDIA alumni, and I did sell all my RSUs in 2010. But don't feel too sorry for me. I wouldn't be here today if I had held on to my shares. But it's extraordinary, the speed at which this is happening. And so what we at NTT have decided to do as one of our major focus areas coming into the near future is focusing on innovative optical and wireless network. You'll start to hear more and more this acronym IOWN. It's a compute and communication infrastructure that we ourselves alone are not focusing on. We are working with a whole constellation of partners called the IOWN Global Forum, and I'll talk more about IOWN Global Forum in a moment. And we're doing this with photonic or optics materials. So why optics? Well, the fundamentals are that optics doesn't need as much energy as electrical wiring as optics do. So as you can just see from this chart, there's a huge delta between using electrical wiring and optical wiring. And that wiring can be within the chip, within the board, between data centers, and that's exactly what we're looking at from the whole spectrum. As I mentioned, IOWN is really looking at how we are going to address the relentless need for energy and compute power and connectivity and data transfer in a way that's going to provide high capacity, much lower power consumption to the degree of 100 times less, 125 times more output, and latency at 1/200th of what we have today. So what does this journey look like? Is this like 2050? It's not. We are right now at NTT demonstrating the ability to connect data centers beyond 100 kilometers apart. So to be able to create that relay delivery service using photonics is step one, and we are already there. And we're working on not just between data centers that are in the same country 100 kilometers apart, we're starting to focus on doing this across countries. Eventually, in 2025, we'll be able to demonstrate using photonics to be able to connect between boards. And then in 2028, we're going to focus on being able to do this between chips. And our audacious goal with a group of foreign members is by 2032 to be able to do this intra-chip. So being able to bring the power of photonics across the entire compute and connectivity ecosystem. So while many of you might say, well, dark fiber and this is all old news, yes, it's the ability to have, and we are one of the largest submarine fiber providers in the world. We are now taking some of that organic ability of using light into the compute, which is where everybody's focus is today. So let me walk through those three areas step by step. So in computing, when you have a circuit board in a server room in a data center, there's going to be suboptimal ways that the energy is being consumed, because you're going to have storage, you're going to have memory, you're going to have processing that will not be used. And so we can use photonics to be able to do disaggregated computing by being able to funnel the need where the energy where it needs to go, or the photonic delivery where it needs to go within the architecture of the boards in the servers in the data center. And the use cases around this are numerous. One that we're focusing on in particular, as many of you know here, machine vision is growing increasingly popular for various use cases, but it's very high compute, a lot of data. That's why an image is worth 1,000 words. A lot of data packed into an image, and being able to process that across a more distributed computing capability with photonics. And this is actual data that we were able to gather of being able to use that elasticity for power management between times of where the compute and the energy requirements are going to be high during the daytime and low during the nighttime, and being able to shuttle that as it needs to happen within the board. So from there, once we have that established in terms of the level that we can do that, the micro level, then we start thinking about the all-photonic network, APN. And if you think about the analog, well, not analog, but the traditional way that this happens is to think about this as, and for those of you who have been to Japan, we love our trains, we're the bullet train, Shinkansen in particular. So up until now, we'll imagine it as an analogy that instead of moving and jumping from train to train as packet switch, with an all-photonic network, you're going to be able to basically just stay on that rail, so to speak. And I'm massively simplifying this because I don't have a PhD and I'm not a professor. I'm getting better, but I'm very excited about what this is going to herald for all of us in this room in terms of that seamlessness. And the elastic load balancing that I was describing to you earlier also is going to convey within this space of a transmission of data. And this brings us to data centers, because data centers is a business that has been skyrocketing and will only continue to do so. And with the hunger for AI, what you see on this chart is a remarkable CAGR, compounded annual growth rate, of data center technologies, consumption, all of that. And what's going to be commensurate with that is going to be the demand. And the amount of demand that's going to put tax on the grid is going to be difficult to manage. As I mentioned, we're already demonstrating how we're able to connect data centers, this in Japan. And this part here is also going to be remarkable and transformative. The all-photonic network with ION is going to be able to enable a hybrid sovereign cloud, because data has become something that people are trying to bring back on-prem. And so with an all-photonic network, you're going to have the elasticity, you're going to have the flexibility to be able to keep certain data on-prem, as it were, and set up the things that you need to have computed in a cloud, and to be able to process all of that in a way that is going to give you the security and the sovereignty that you need around the data that you're trying to manage. So, human intelligence begot artificial intelligence. And now this rush to artificial intelligence is creating an immense amount of nervousness and criticalities as it relates to our grid, as it relates to data, as it relates to a whole host. Probably all 17 UN SDGs are impacted at this point right now. But I hope what I've been able to inspire you with is how a group of bright-minded individuals across our ecosystem are coming together to say, how can we go back to something that's a form of intelligence from nature, which is light? When I landed at Barcelona airport 2 days ago, it was half raining for those of you who arrived on Saturday. Lo and behold, a rainbow appeared right in front of me as I was in the taxi, and I thought, okay, this means I'm probably going to be able to get through this, although I went over time, so I wasn't perfect, but I also didn't see the whole rainbow, so maybe that should have been emblematic. But all of this is going to be on top of what we believe to be the future of connectivity, compute, and sustainable AI infrastructure development, which is a collective effort. And if you'd like to know more, there will be a group of us here tomorrow at the ION Global Forum at the Partner Theater number 6. We have Kawazoe-san here from Japan, who is leading that whole effort across many groups within NTT. And you'll see that we're joined by a number of our partners, from Nokia to NVIDIA to Broadcom to Red Hat and a whole host of other ones. So please join us. We'd love to talk to you more about this, because it's with everybody's thoughts and innovative mindsets that we're going to be able to bring the future faster and look at subatomic particles as part of the material science that we're going to harness. If you'd like to get in touch with me, please find me on LinkedIn. And arigatou gozaimasu. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rika. I'm going to sneak in one quick question before you get away, which is, if you look ahead, a lot of people have set 2030 for their sustainability goals. I think we've seen earlier today how elusive the future can be when trying to predict it that way. But what does good look like to you in the sort of 5-6 years' time that deadline gives us?
Yeah, 2030 was a year that a lot of companies set for their sustainability goals, and lo and behold, a lot of companies are revising their dates to like 2040, 2050. 2030 will be past this presidential campaign in the US, so that'll be interesting to see what's on the other side of that. But on the topic of what I see around this area is, as I mentioned, at NTT and our Global Forum partners, we're really really moving at velocity around this. And I think that what we'll see is this convergence of policymakers, industry players, and technology leaders that are going to come around to think about a sustainable AI infrastructure. And I think by 2030, there will be a global coalition that will be an instrumental part of how this might look like in the next G20, G7, World Economic Forum, pick your global platform of choice, and it will be one that we can believe is going to lead to a much more sustainable future together.
Well, let's hope so.
Thank you.
So, Rika, thank you very much indeed. Fascinating. So, to bring it home, we have our final guest of this session. I'd like to welcome Balaji Krishnan to the stage. He is a serial entrepreneur, now the CEO of Displace, and going to talk about the future of something we're all very familiar with, which is glass, and how it can bring in a new era of computing. So, welcome, Balaji.
Hey guys, good afternoon. I'm Balaji, I'm the founder of Displace. I'll talk about Displace a little later. But like Chris said, I'm going to talk about a very simple material that's glass. We all are familiar with glass, but this material has transformed so many industries. But I want to focus on one specific industry which I'm familiar with. It's age of computing. So how glass has transformed the computing industry, and how is it going to be transforming even further? But I also want to touch base on how computing can also transform the glass industry to create something called smart glass. So before jumping in, I want to show, we're all familiar with all the computers that we've been using for the past several decades. Personal computers like laptops and desktops, handheld computers like tablets and smartphones, and even we heard a lot about spatial computers. This is up and coming. One thing that's common among all these devices, which I classify them as on-demand computers. On-demand computers is where users are actively accessing information from these devices. It's not pushed to you, even though the notifications are pushed to you, but you have to open it, and you're going to be accessing these spatial computers and handheld computers only when you want to retrieve information. But let's look at how glass has actually played a significant role in all these devices. And if you look at the handheld computers and desktop computers, the cover glass is something that's commonly seen, which offers scratch resistance, rigidity, durability, and even anti-glare feature, and much more. So technically, glass is actually a face of the computers that we have been using. But if you want to think about what is next for the age of computing, and there is a new form of computing platform that is being built by many companies. It's called ambient computers. So ambient computers is where computing completely disappears. It blends with your environment. It just morphs into your ambience. So you don't see the computers, but computers actually deliver value to you by pushing the information to you. So for this ambient computing to work, it's not just going to be one product that you're going to be buying. It's going to be around you. So let's look at what kind of glass products that we have around us. One is television. It's a sad state that the TVs have the huge, biggest display that we all have at homes, but it is one of the dumbest displays that we have at home compared to computers like laptops and smartphones. But it has a big piece of glass, the display glass. And then even mirrors. There's a lot of mirror glass that people have in different rooms, and even windows and glass walls, and much more. Even if you think about coffee glass, there's a lot of glass that we have around us. Now, if we want to create ambient computers, the question is, can these glass products become ambient computers? And we strongly believe that is the future. So the computing is going to be built into the glass, and that will create a new age of computing, which we call as ambient computers. So I want to actually play a quick video that was made by none other than Koning. This was actually made, this is a concept video that was made by Koning in 2011, like 13 years back, when I was doing my first company. This is called A Day Made of Glass. They actually visualized how the life would be if all the glass around you becomes smarter. So I just want to play a quick video here. Isn't that cool? If every a piece of glass around us becomes smarter, then this is actually a shorter version of that video. If you search on YouTube, you can actually find a lengthier version. It's like 8-minute video where they show even the windshield of your car and the coffee glass, everything becomes smarter. And so with that inspiration, I'm the founder of this company called Displace. I started this 1.5 years back. And what we create at Displace is the world's first wireless TV. And it is truly wireless. There's no power cords. There's no wires. There's no ports. So our vision is, the largest display that like I said, the largest display that people have at home is TVs, but it is a dumb display that's sitting in one corner. But if you want to actually bring this information display around you, and is it possible for us to make people to put these TVs on the wall very easily? So when we looked at it, there were a lot of friction points, and one of the friction points was the wires. So we removed the wires, and we made TVs powered by batteries. So in fact, Zina, sorry, you were talking about graphene, because we were actually looking at graphene. To make a wireless TV, it is not enough to just put batteries. You have to make this TV super light, so people can actually pick it up. And we also invented this new technology called active loop vacuum technology. So we have suction cups built behind the TV, so you can literally pick up the TV, bring it closer to the wall, it'll just stick to the wall. So that opened up a lot of industries that bought our TVs last year. We won the Best of CES last year, but we are the only TV that can be attached to a glass wall. So you cannot put any TV today on a glass. So I see this to be less of a TV, but more of a computer. So that's what we are actually building. And this opened up, like, people the yacht companies bought our TVs, and even home builders, art studios, museums, and even racetracks, and consumers, of course, they bought. So the TVs can talk to each other. The TVs will be delivering value, contextual value, and personalized value for you whenever you move from room to room. You are watching a game in your bedroom, you move to the kitchen, it will automatically move the game to you, to your kitchen display. So that's what we are building, and we believe that by disrupting the television market, we are taking one step towards achieving this ambient computing vision. So with that, I strongly believe that smart glass and ambient computing is going to be the future, and it's going to be play along with each other. So computing is going to make glass a smart glass, and smart glass is going to be very important to achieve ambient computing. It might sound impossible to achieve this whole platform, but at Displace, we have a slogan called Achieve Impossible, and that's what we're doing. And we would love to see many partner ecosystem, join our ecosystem to build this ambient computing platform. And that's it. Thank you.
Balaji, thank you very much indeed. You touched on it at the end there. Just one question for you. This is obviously a very big idea, and for you, lots of things have to happen. What's your perspective on how the technology ecosystem, a lot of people represented here at this conference, how does that ecosystem need to come together to make something like that possible?
Yeah, so like I said, the ambient computing is not going to be built by one company and one product. So you have to think about, even if you look around your kitchen and bedroom and living rooms, TVs is only one piece of the puzzle. You have refrigerators, you have microwave ovens, you have coffee glass, and many other things. So my thinking is every company that is going to be building these products that are considered to be a legacy product, if they can actually think about using a modern material and infusing computing into those modern materials, then you will be getting into this vision of ambient computing. And which is why even for us building the TV, we looked at how to make the TV lighter, and graphene is one of the best materials that we have found. But it's very expensive for us to use now, but eventually it will happen, and we're using carbon fiber. That is one of the materials that no TV companies have been using because there was no reason for them to use it. But we have a reason to achieve ambient computing, so we used that. So I believe that all these ecosystem partners should be thinking about disrupting their existing products by infusing computing into their products.
Brilliant. Brilliant.
Right.
Again, thank you very much indeed.
Thanks, guys.
So that brings us to the end of formal proceedings. I'd say thank you very much indeed to our four panelists, to Zina, to Rika, to Kostya, to Balaji. It has been an eye-opening and mind-expanding 60 minutes. I feel like we've covered so much in that time, and then at the same time, barely scratched the surface at all. So I hope that that has given everybody some insights and some ideas to think about. And I do think that it's important to say that whilst there was some deep science here, and there's some very complicated issues, this is actually something that's relevant for everyone, because everything that happens in this industry around this conference, everything sits on the materials and the ideas that we've talked about here. And everyone can participate in that. You don't have to be a deep scientist. You can also, this is about collaboration, it's about ideas, it's about advocacy, finance, governance, strategy, regulation, persuasion, engagement. So everyone has a role in this, and everyone has a part they can play. So I hope this has given everybody something to think about and take away back to their daily lives. And just to say again, thank you very much indeed for joining us.